How you doing? My name's Corey, but chronically online boxing fans know me better as Intentional Butt. Now, for those of you familiar with Rummy's Corner, you can think of this as kind of a spin-off or side quest or Gaiden type of situation. This is IB's Vertex. Way up in the dark and cobweb, shadowy recesses of the corners of the internet. Now, Rummy and I, we go way back, talking decades. And you know something? He's a pretty cool cat for a Yankees fan. Today, we're going to have a look at the Riyadh Season World Boxing Council Grand Prix, which enters its sixth and final stage this coming Saturday, December 20th. Shout out to D. Carlotta, by the way, for actually bringing the Grand Prix initially to my and the rest of the forum's attention. He hasn't been active on the boards since late May. Hoping all is well and he's in good health. All right, so the matchups that we have on the slate for December 20th are Mohamed Shamali Jr. versus Brandon Mejia Mosquera at featherweight. Mujibilo Dilmurajan Ogli Tursunov versus Carlos Alfonso Utria Lopez at 140 pounds, light welterweight. Derek Pomerlow versus Dylan Biggs at middleweight. And finally, Ahmed Kernich versus Kevin Christopher Ramirez at heavyweight. Let's go ahead and climb our way up in body mass, shall we? Starting in the 57 kilogram division. As everybody that's followed my commentary of the Grand Prix is well aware, because I talk about it ad nauseum, the most exciting prospect in the mix, in my opinion, is Mexican featherweight Brandon Mejia Mosquera. I became an instant fan of his at first sight, and I now heavily favor him to defeat Albanian southpaw Mohamed Mr. Robot Shamali come the finals. To borrow a line from Rummy, however, I'm not exactly Nostradamus. It's possible, though in my view improbable, that Mosquera doesn't end up hoisting the Jose Sulaiman Trophy when all is said and done. I still would think, even if that were to happen, that he is pound for pound the biggest must-watch blue-chip prospect to emerge from this particular tourney. Looking at the tail of the tape, Brandon has 170 centimeters in height and the same exact measurement for reach. Mohamed Shamali has 170 centimeters of height as well, but 172 centimeters of reach. So their height's identical, but Mejia is giving up the better part of an inch in his wingspan. What really gives Shamali a chance here, though, are a couple of intangibles. A, there's his toughness, which is on display if you've ever seen him fight. And then there's his versatility in multiple ways. To my latter point, he's both ambidextrous, and the utility of being a switch hitter in this sport cannot be understated and is often overlooked. And he's somebody that's comfortable both pressing the pace as well as slowing things down and studying his opponent from medium or long range to look for offensive openings. Ultimately, it will be his instincts guiding him to step in and rumble with Mejia, exploiting perceived defensive deficiencies that will be his own undoing, as I don't think he's quite prepared for just how much of an edge the Mexican actually has in explosive punching power. All right, and to all my hermanos in the Hispanosphere, apologies if I butcher the crap out of this. Creo firmemente que BMM o Brandon El Perro Mejia Mosquera es la verdad absolutamente y que sin duda ganará un campeonato mundial a fin de cuentas. Su estilo es una delicia, puro y duro, sólido y limpio. Si aún no lo has visto en acción, ¿a qué esperas? Ya es muy tarde en el juego, cabrones. No mames, güey. Anyway, moving on to the 63.5 kilogram division, we have Tursunov versus Utria. The former has 171 centimeters in height and 170 centimeters in reach, while Utria has 174 and 166. All right, so he's taller, but he's a little stubbier. In spite of that, my pick is Utria, fairly confidently and most likely to win by stoppage. Now, while in the semifinals, Tursunov may have defeated a superior opponent with a much richer amateur pedigree in Danilo Lozan of the Ukraine than did Utria in Tetelelo Unkosi, a South African of Zulu heritage, there are, in my mind, a few factors that make that distinction immaterial. First off is the fact that I actually scored that contest for Lauzon. Now, Tursunov getting the nod by majority decision was by no means among the most egregious robberies of the year or anything. It's just one that the judges got wrong, in my opinion. The damning thing about such a could-go-either-way affair, though, is that Lauzon, despite being very skillful, is stylistically built more for success in the amateur system than in the pros, while the opposite seems truer of Tursunov, which should benefit him. That brings me to my next point, which is that styles make fights, along with intangibles. And both of those, especially combined synergistically, favor the Colombian here. Tursunov is a light-punching pressure swarmer, and very short for the division. Utria is taller, longer, and much harder hitting. Granted, neither has faced stellar opposition yet in their pro careers prior to jumping into the Grand Prix, else they wouldn't have been eligible to join in the first place. But against the level that they have faced, Tursunov has just 2 stoppages in 9 starts. Utria has 11 in 13. That puts Utria's KO rate in the mid-80s and Tursunov's less than a quarter of that, in the low 20s. I expect Tursunov will throw more, but not necessarily at a higher clip, and his punches will have much less effect on Utria than vice versa. You don't have to look very hard for the Uzbek, who tends to rely on his high work rate offense as his defense, and he has never been in with a puncher like Utria, let alone over an 8-round distance. IB fun fact. This is the only contest in the finals in which both men come in still completely unblemished. Biggs, up at middleweight, has a professional loss, while featherweight Muhammad Chamali has 1 draw on his record, and heavyweight Kevin Christopher Ramirez has 2 draws. On to middleweight, 72.5 kilograms. We have Pomerleau representing France, 179 centimeters tall, 178 centimeters of reach, and Biggs from Australia, coming in down under with 183 centimeters in height and 181 centimeters of reach. So here we have yet another installment of that famously bitter national rivalry between France and Australia. I'm just kidding, that isn't a thing. Well, actually, yeah, kind of moderately in rugby, but I digress. Neither country is any better than the other. In terms of red wine, lots of Shiraz is very good. Lots of Bordeaux is very good. But they must both bend the knee to the undisputed supreme GOAT, Tuscany. Apropos of nothing, IB fun fact number 2, Paris is the city with the largest population of wallabies outside of Oz, with a couple of hundred of them living as an invasive species after a few of the mischievous marsupials escaped the Sauvage Zoo in Amancé when a storm knocked out the power back in the 70s. More you know. Back to boxing. Pomerleau's nickname is Slick, and while he's sometimes capable of living up to it, he probably isn't as slick as he may believe himself to be. If you watch his match with feather-fisted fellow southpaw Paul Stephen Ryan, you'll see him get completely discombobulated and given a standing 8 count when the Irishman catches him during sloppy transitional footwork with a solid left hand on the crown. Ironically, this happened while Pomerleau was doing everything right defensively. He was both ducking and holding his guard up, the latter being something he doesn't do nearly enough of when he's in range to get hit, apparently figuring he has cat-like reflexes to bail him out. I take a much dimmer view of his ability to slip punches timely. Prime Roy Jones Jr., he ain't. As for the Bow Desert Storm, the only person to beat the Aussie so far is countryman Nikita the Butcher Zhu, in a battle of green prospects very early in both of their careers. Now, considering the pedigree of Nikita, being the son of Kostya Zhu and currently an 11-0 contender ranked top 15 by multiple sanctioning organizations, that's no great shame. Of course, I'd be remiss not to point out that, like Pomerleau, Nikita Zhu is a southpaw, albeit one packing a lot more power in both hands. This one could prove very competitive, but I think over an 8-round distance, Biggs will be able to invest enough work on Pomerleau's very available midsection with his workmanlike body-punching approach to wear him down for a decision or late stoppage victory. And last but certainly not least, we have the over 90 kilogram division, the mythical heavyweight realm. The marquee attraction has Ahmed Kernich in one corner, and Kevin Christopher Ramirez in the other. Only one of those men is a heavyweight. More on that in a moment. Now, let me preface all this by saying this is the pick in which I am by far the least confident. This is more of a heart than a head pick. The heavyweight division in the Grand Prix has been on a wild and unpredictable ride from the jump. Initially, the field was supposed to include Olympic gold medalist Lazizbek Molojanov. This was a double-edged blade. On the one hand, Molojanov's involvement brought a lot of eyeballs, including, admittedly, my own. If he hadn't been announced in a heavyweight bracket, there's every chance I might have given this entire thing a miss, given that I'd heard of exactly none of the other participants. And let's be honest, boxing tourneys come and go outside a very rare few, like the Super Middleweight Super 6 World Boxing Classic. Most of them end up not being that memorable or meaningful. So, his initial involvement, being advertised, was beneficial to the tourney. On the other hand, it almost seemed like an unfairly easy path for someone of Molojanov's caliber to mow down a bunch of relative novices en route to claiming the inaugural heavyweight Sulaiman Trophy, having barely even broken a sweat. As fate would have it, despite having every conceivable competitive advantage already, Molojanov made the decision to cheat. And he got caught. Ahead of his planned quarterfinal match, a random doping test revealed methasterone in his system. Now, this isn't one of those chintzy or ambiguous cases where somebody fails a drug test, and it's something that could maybe be present in a supplement they ingested without realizing it, or where a substance can be used as a masking agent for other things, but that isn't necessarily what's going on, or where an athlete happens to smoke cannabis within a few days of performing. And it's like, so what? This is a known anabolic, androgenic, synthetic steroid with zero acceptable medical use. Not produced by the human body. There's no arguing your way around this. Scumbag move by Molojanov. But hey, at least it introduced a measure of parity into the heavyweight field of the Grand Prix. In the wake of his exit, many people looked to Ahmed Bosnian Steel Krnić as the surrogate prohibitive favorite to win it all. Absent the disgraced Uzbek, the Big Balkan is the largest human remaining in the bracket, as well as the most experienced, if you take into account all combat sports, spanning amateur and professional boxing, and amateur and professional kickboxing. Now, as for Ramirez, he's the only man in the finals without any reliable published tale of tape data, per my introduction. I reached out to a member of his team, actually, hoping to discern his reach and height, but wasn't able to glean anything. So let's look then at his face-off at the quarterfinal weigh-in with Piotr Łącz. And yes, by the way, that is the Polish pronunciation. It isn't anything like you'd think by looking at it and sounding it out phonetically. L-A-C-Z, Łącz. Kevin is at least an inch shorter than Piotr, and Łącz is listed at 5'11.5", which means the plucky Argentinian could be giving up as much as half a foot against the Bosnian giant standing 6'4.5". Now, Ramirez, by rights, isn't a heavyweight, and has no business having even made it this far. Indeed, prior to joining the Grand Prix, he'd campaigned exclusively at cruiserweight since his pro debut. Even so, Ramirez has fought out of his skin and earned his berth in the finals. Even his initial split draw with Łącz was considered an overachievement, and when the WBC executive panel awarded him the contest on countback and sent him into the semis against American hopeful Dante Stone, he was given virtually no chance. And yet, he dropped and defeated Stone as well. Krnić, for his part, has looked rather uninspired in his last few outings. Despite never having lost, he doesn't fight with the urgency or desperation that you'd expect of somebody that wants to both keep their zero and claim a lucrative tournament championship. He squeaked by in his last two, by majority and split decision. And to be perfectly frank, neither opponent was really anything close to elite, or even what I'd call a prospect. Now, my fervent hope here, despite conventional boxing logic being that a good big man will always beat a good little man, is that the gap in relative drive and desire that they've shown thus far will carry over into the finals, and Ramirez will be able to hustle his way to an upset over a complacent Ahmed Krnić, and claim a prestigious and unlikely honor for himself before returning to Cruiser, where he actually belongs. As of today, no betting sites have published odds for any of the 4 finals matches. I'm expecting Krnic to be a substantial favorite at heavyweight, but there's no telling how the rest will be handicapped. I've given you my picks, but again, to quote Rummy, the hell do I know? Now, in addition to Rummy and D. Carlotta, I'd like to shout out Badbot, CST80, Ice 8 Cold, Kiwi Fish, Surge, The Anatolian, The Hook 13, and What a Rock for their regular contributions on the forum threads relating to every stage of the Grand Prix. Information for this video was sourced from BoxRec.com, FightFacts.com, RTFight.com, and Tapology.com, as well as WBC's own website and Wikipedia. This has been IB's Vertex, and going forward, you know where to find me. Up your corner and around the corner. Till next time, peace. All right, go. Get the hell out of my kitchen. Come on.